Primary voters in South Carolina head to the polls in 2 weeks. It's anyone's guess how they will vote, particularly black voters. Joe Biden is considered the frontrunner when it comes to having their support, but his rivals are circling as more South Carolinians say they are undecided. And on today's The View, Biden talked about Mike Bloomberg, Biden's closest rival, who could siphon some of the black vote, and the controversy over Bloomberg's recent stop and frisk comments.
Well, look,
2019. Why are you laughing?
Well, I'm laughing because it's amazing how every single thing I've said for the last 40 years has come up, and I've answered them all. We're just now getting into the place where we're looking at other people's records. But here's the other piece of it. Every single day today on the streets of the United States of America, African Americans and minorities are being gunned down as if it were a massacre every day. And we're not talking about it. No one talks about it.
Let's go to South Carolina to Tameika Devine. She's a member at large on the city council in Columbia. She is the first black woman elected to that post. So Tameika, a pleasure. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Brooke, for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
You have met and hosted events for so many of these candidates, and I had read that you said it's kind of like you're the popular girl in high school and everyone's trying to ask you to the dance. So I know you're undecided, but how are you going to pick your dance partner?
You know, I think the next 2 weeks will be make or break for a lot of these campaigns. A lot of the candidates have a lot of things that speak to me, but you know, it's hard to really decipher when they really get down to the details who actually speaks to the constituents that I represent. So that's really going to be the test for me. Are you leaning toward anyone at the moment? You know, I have my top three. I'm not going to necessarily say. You know, so I've been impressed with, well, I was impressed with Devine Patrick, but of course yesterday he ended his campaign. Honestly, Tom Steyer has made a whole lot of leeway here in South Carolina, and particularly in my constituents. He's been in a lot of the neighborhoods, and my constituents like him, and I like his record. Certainly, Vice President Biden has a long history with our state, so he is up there as well, and Elizabeth Warren. So it'll be really interesting to see as the next couple weeks who really speaks to the issues that are important to the folks that I represent.
Okay, Mike Bloomberg. How about Mike Bloomberg? Let me just play this exchange because his some audio, recently resurfaced audio from 2015. His comments on stop and frisk are making a lot of waves again. Here he was.
Put all the cops in the minority neighborhoods. Yes, that's true. Why we do it? Because that's where all the crime is. And the way you get the guns out of the kids' hands is to throw them against the wall and frisk them.
He has since said that those comments don't reflect how he governed or how he thinks. I'm curious, Tameika, did those comments, does what happened in New York some years ago at all factor into your decision in South Carolina?
You know, I think that that's going to certainly make a case. The thing about Mike Bloomberg is he's not going to be on the ballot here in South Carolina. So even though there are some people who are looking at him, they know that they're not going to be able to cast a vote for or against him unless they, you know, write him in. So I don't think that he's getting a whole lot of play right now. But the interesting part, one of his national co-chairs is our mayor, who has a lot of respect in this state, in this nation. And so people are kind of looking at Steve Benjamin to say, if you think that that's okay, tell us more. Why do you think Bloomberg is going to be the person? So we'll see after if he makes any leeway in the primary. But we're not voting for him on South Carolina because he won't be on our ballot.
Right. No, of course. I guess I was thinking big picture. I mean, it could be the battle between progressives and moderates, and who knows what happens down the road. And I'm just curious how that sits on your heart. You know, a lot of people. Unlike a lot of people in this country, you know, you can say you've actually met most of these candidates. And I hear you name check some of them, but you're not quite there. Is there anyone that you've met that you're like, man, I would just really love to have a glass of wine or a cup of coffee with, who just really speaks to you in that way? That's always sort of the unofficial litmus test.
Several of them. I mean, one-on-one, they're very personable. So we've had a lot of opportunities to kind of sit down one-on-one. I think a lot of the candidates personally have a lot of great character values. And so the ones that are left in the race, I I would love to have a sit down and a glass of wine with Elizabeth Warren and really see how she's going to implement the big, bold policies that she's proposing. You know, the devil's in the details.
And just lastly, I know you just mentioned Elizabeth Warren, you mentioned Joe Biden, maybe you're in your top three. Do their more disappointing finishes in Iowa or New Hampshire have any impact on what you'll do in South Carolina, or is it new state, new start?
You know, here in South Carolina, and I've heard a lot of people comment on New Hampshire and Iowa, you know, South Carolina is a lot more of a diverse state. And so what I hear from people, and really how I feel, is the way the voters in Iowa and New Hampshire voted aren't necessarily indicative of the way we're going to vote here, because we're a lot more diverse. A lot of the issues speak to us in a different way than it does the folks in Iowa and New Hampshire.
All right, Tameika, good luck picking your dance partner. You got just a couple weeks. Tameika Isaac Devine, thank you so much.
Thank you.